Hello. I am putting glue on my 3-1 strip, and you can tell I might have maybe been fighting with the computer to make the recordings, but we're just going to go on with it. So there's going to be a bunch of little small recordings with other ones in between. I hope that'll work to give you the best picture of what's going on. So we're going to take notes, but we're also going to listen to other people. One of my friends, Becca Delozier, we're going to use her videos and then some ones that are more animations. But the number one thing, chapter 3 is all about water. Water is essential to life. Everybody knows that, but you have to think about why. What is it about water that makes it so special? Because most of what goes on Earth is because of the properties of water. So the number one thing that you need to remember is water is polar. So let's move that down. So polarity is having an unequal charge. So you've got a more positive part and a more negative part. So polarity is, so you've got a molecule with areas that are positive or more positive, and areas that are negative. What did I just basically define? Whoops, I wrote it out. Negative. That's what my brain was thinking. It's like a magnet. Now that's not a molecule. That's just an example. It's magnet-like. And so it's going to have this need to orient itself in a particular way. So that's the key. So the key is because of this, so because of the difference in the charges along this molecule, you're going to have a specific orientation that they're going to have. Like they're going to have to line up in a certain way. It's predictable, and it's going to be what that we use in order to have all of the properties that we have. This is based on, how do you get this area that's more positive and that's more negative? Through electronegativity. So electronegativity is the tendency to pull electrons, I'm not going to write that out anymore, to itself. So you tend to have a draw of electrons to yourself, and what it's going to be from is you're going to have protons that are going to be positive, but you have empty shell. And I think that, that's something we can easily see. So let's think about what you did in chemistry. You did Lewis dot. So this is oxygen. It has 6 valence electrons. A full shell's 8. And biological systems have hacks. I don't know how to describe it, but they can do things so that they gain the benefit of something they can't actually do. I know that doesn't make any sense. Let me draw this out. So you've got 6. So you've got these open places. So if this shell would be complete, it would be 8. And oxygen is going to move towards stability when it has a full shell. So it does this really cool thing. And you learned covalent bonds, but you didn't think about it as far as a biological system. Oxygen is going to use the 1 electron that hydrogen has. And now it still needs to do that again. So it'll do that again and use the 1 electron that hydrogen has. And you get this really odd thing that happens. So they're sharing this electron, and they're sharing this one and this one. So hydrogen acts like it has a full shell. because the full shell for it would be 2. Oxygen, got so many colors, why am I not using it? Oxygen counts those electrons as well, and it acts like it has a full shell. So this is what covalent bonding is when it comes to a biological system. You're going to have the stability that's gained from a full shell, even though you don't really have one. You have it because you're sharing. So oxygen behaves like it's stable, and so does hydrogen. But oxygen is highly electronegative. So the way that this would work if you looked at it with time, so I'll use my pencil. If you're an electron and you're moving around this molecule, you're going to stay longer around oxygen than you will around hydrogen. So you're going to be here longer. That means that this side of the water would have a more negative charge, and then it does stay as long around hydrogens because they don't have that pull that is electronegative like oxygen does. So it slows down here, and then it's just not drawn to the hydrogens like it is. So you end up with not a full charge, but a partial negative charge for the oxygen, and a partial positive charge for the hydrogens. So you get a dipole, which just means there's 2 poles. You have a negative and positive in water. So that's going to be the actual way that polarity, this dipole, is created, is through electronegativity. So if you didn't have oxygen here, then water wouldn't have that pull of electrons toward the oxygen, because if it wasn't there, if it was something else, then you wouldn't have this difference in charge across the molecule. So this changes the way that water orients itself in space. So now I want to draw some waters with you. Hold on just one second. Okay, I had to check something, make sure in my notes what I wanted to do. So let's just draw a couple of waters, and then in the later video I'll draw them more with you. But when you have this, you have a specific way that they align themselves with each other. So let's start with the oxygen, and then these bonds, these covalent bonds, are drawn with just bars, so dashes. So this is covalent. Living things have covalent bonds. Covalent bonds are reversible. You can have an enzyme, which is just like a little machine, and it can undo that bond. Ionic bonds are pretty permanent, and so biological things don't function well with permanence. The reversible is important. So you have 2 covalent bonds, and these will be exactly like that until they're broken purposefully with an enzyme. So movement, energy, all of that isn't going to change it. It will stay like this. So you have oxygen covalently bonded to 2 hydrogens, and your oxygen has a tendency to pull the electrons to itself. So it's going to have a negative, partial negative charge here. And because there's less time around each hydrogen, they are relatively positive. So that's partial positive. Now this being the case, and we said they're magnet-like, the negative is going to be attracted to the positive. So if I drew another water here, I couldn't put an oxygen with an oxygen. So here's my waters. Here they are. So the white are the hydrogens, the red are the oxygens, and I can't make those bond. They will not. They're not attracted to each other. In fact, they're pushing against each other. But the hydrogen orients itself toward the oxygen. So you would have a hydrogen, and it would orient itself toward this oxygen, and it would continue to do that. So here by the hydrogen you'd have oxygen. So you have a layout that's predictable, and there's a pattern to it based on partial charge. And what happens when you say that these, let me just go ahead and put the rest of my stuff in here. So there's the covalent bonds, because I've drawn 3 waters. So now I'll put partial positive, negative, partial negative. Okay? So this attraction between the partial positive and the partial negative of one water to another water is called a hydrogen bond. And hydrogen bonds themselves are very weak. But together, trillions of them are really strong. So, again, this is one water. This is another water. So the attraction here between the oxygen of one water and the hydrogen of another, these are hydrogen bonds. And they're fleeting, they're fast. So they're made and they're broken. They're made and they're broken because the waters are always moving, and when they're moving, they're orienting themselves in the way that the oxygen of one is next to the hydrogen of another, and they're attracted to it, and then it's gone. And then it moves, and then it's gone, and then attracted, and then it's gone. So that there's, let's write that information. So for hydrogen bonds, so hydrogen bonding is the key to the properties of water. So hydrogen bonds are very weak individually. They don't last very long, so they're very short-lived. They're made and they're broken, they're made and they're broken. But collectively, they're really strong. And they allow water, look at this is so weird. So we've got all of these waters, and I shouldn't be able to hold them by just one, but I can. I can hold them because of the attraction that they have. And notice how it'll just change, but yet they're still all together. And that's because of the hydrogen bonding. It's because of this fleeting attraction that you get between the oxygen of one water and the hydrogen of another. So all of these properties are going to be what's called emergent. And emergent just means you have these relationships, and when these relationships all come together, then you can do something you couldn't do before. So it emerges, like it comes out of. And so all of those are emergent. So now we'll just keep doing little bites of stuff. We'll see how it goes.